Thank you for joining us today for our second feature focus of the day. This is a live Q&A for the feature documentary film Shadow of Dumont, directed by Trevor Cameron. And Shadow of Dumont is going to be available on demand until Friday, October 23rd. Before we start, we want to say thank you to our presenting partner, Crave, as well as our screening partner, Doc Institute. My name is Susan Blight. I am a member of the programming jury for imagineNATIVE 2020, and super happy to be here today with the director, Trevor Cameron, and the animator, Gilbert Baldhead. So congratulations on Shadow of Dumont. Thank you so much for joining us. Maybe let's start with a round of introductions. We'll let everyone who's viewing know who you are, and yeah. Trevor, you want to start?
Sure. My name is Trevor Cameron. I am a Métis. I'm currently in Toronto, isolating nicely in my dirty house. And yeah, I'm the writer and director of Shadow of Dumont.
I guess I'm next.
You are next.
Hi, my name is Gilbert Baldhead. I'm from Saskatchewan, from One Arrow First Nation. I live in Saskatoon. I put all the designs together for the animated portions of Trevor's documentary. Did all the designs, helped in the animation with Zirkus Creative and some wonderful people that put it all together and looks so awesome.
Had you worked together before? Is this your first time working on a film together?
No, we've been together for like a couple of decades at least.
Yeah, it actually has been, huh? Over the years, we've been, we met on Wapu's Bay. We've worked together in a couple different countries. We famously were in Goa, India, a few years ago, working on an animation together.
I think it was 4 months.
Yeah, 4 months in India. So you really get to know someone after 4 months.
Yeah.
Well, I've heard that Goa is one of the most beautiful places in India. So
it is.
That's been nice. Yeah.
And hot.
Yes.
I've heard that as well. In many ways, there are themes in the film of history, and I'm thinking like the relationship of history and distance in the film, like the ways in which history is both distant from us and connected or close to us. So can you maybe, Trevor, start by talking about that as a theme in the film, the idea of history and distance, and how it affected your choices as a filmmaker?
Sure. So when I was thinking about this documentary, I wasn't thinking about it in terms of how many years ago it was. It was something that I thought of as my grandfather, his grandfather, is the first one in 1885 to die in the uprising. And it kind of put the idea of how we sometimes take time for granted and history, and this idea of legacy being sometimes diluted by when you put the years on it. But when you put it in terms of family connections, when you start talking about your grandfather's grandfather, it pulls it closer. And this idea of traveling, I think that when I was doing my original research, so much of it was online at libraries, poring over books. And that's why when I was given the opportunity to film this documentary, it was really important to get out of that. I didn't want to have a sterile recounting of what other people experienced. I wanted to put it on the road and find these places and truly see what they look like.
And Gilbert, in terms of as an animator in depicting these events, but also those sort of themes of connection and distance, what was your approach in doing that?
Well, I had to talk with Trevor kind of extensively and get his point of view, and then always going back to because One Arrow is just right beside Batoche, right, in Saskatchewan, and I've always grown up knowing what happened there with the rebellion and all. It just sort of came out of that. And there was a whole component on Trevor's trip that he did to the States, the Northern States. And it's that history I didn't know. And so I kind of had to learn that from speaking with Trevor, and it all had to come together, and I had to start, sit down and drawing it all out.
Yeah.
But, from this documentary, you got the whole picture, I would say now, thanks to this documentary. And it just came full circle for me.
Well, and I mean, before we leave that topic, I think there is an important part that Gilbert did. Besides animating, he also was the man who painted the van. And if you've seen the documentary, Gilbert and I really hashed out what we wanted this van to look like. And it was really special having not just it being created at One Arrow, but also this idea of taking what we saw as Gabriel Dumont as hero and putting him on this van and then driving him for over 10,000 kilometers to give us that feeling of legacy. This idea that Gabriel Dumont's ghost on the side of this van is visiting all these places he's already been to before. It's kind of neat.
Yeah, and the van is such a potent symbol in the film. Mm-hmm. I think there are connotations of like the Indian car, Powwows have like Indian car parades and things like that. But there's also vans from the 70s that are customized to kind of look cool. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I was actually just agreeing, and I forgot to shut up about it. Sorry about that. That was actually one of the things that we talked about early on with Gilbert was, I was talking about, I wanted a van to have that feeling of, the early Métis being semi-nomadic, the idea that they would winter, and like the Cree, they would winter and then they would go off in the spring, and, kind of your house is on your back. And, when we were talking, the idea of a camper van was exactly what we wanted it to feel like. This idea that symbolically our house is on our back while we do this documentary, but it also had to be cool enough that it could like crash any powwow if need be. And, that aesthetic was deliberate.
And I think we were actually at One Arrow First Nation powwow with the band.
That's true.
And it turned a lot of heads, that band.
I'm sure it was very popular there.
And I have these friends in Saskatoon. They text me or inbox me and they say, "Hey, we saw a van."
Yeah,
we saw the van. Yeah.
Well, I feel like it's my job to ask the burning questions for the audience. So where is the van now? Who has the van?
The van is with the producers.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll just leave it at that. It's not dead. It's just been protected. Let's say it's been protected. It's a good, safe way to say it.
Undisclosed location.
Yeah.
There you go.
Ready to roll once once COVID is gone. We can put it on the road again.
So you mentioned, the idea of movement, and this is a road trip movie as well as a documentary, which I find really interesting. So I'm wondering the connection between that idea of sort of moving across the landscape and in our histories as Indigenous peoples. Like, what does that connection mean to you?
Well, I mean, I think in the documentary, Beth Cuthand said it best. This idea of, there was a time for us to really to close ranks and get stronger, but you can't only do that. You have to open yourself up and share. And that's what
I think she said. Go on an adventure. Go on an adventure. She was saying. I think.
Yeah. Go on.
Yeah.
And it also it reminded me of how Gabriel Dumont has way more history to him than just the uprising, so much more than just those few months of uprising. There's this, I think 4 lifetimes worth of history there.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the film itself is very location based, and like it's moving, but it's also about where these things happened and connection to those places. So,
Yeah.
Gilbert, in terms of your animation, what was your approach to, to articulating those places and what happened there?
Well, that would be our almost daily meetings with Trevor and Anand and Kelly. Is I couldn't really go on the road trip itself because I was already at back in Saskatoon. I already do a drawing, but so it kind of evolved over that 1 year with COVID and stuff like that, where I work from home.
Well, and we actually, I remember trying to talk you into coming on the trip with me a lot, because I imagined us doing like this A-team, set up our computer to edit in the back and, take turns driving and, animating on the side. But yeah, you did so much. Part of the animation, and I feel responsible for it, is just how many different drafts Gilbert had to break down, because I put him through the ringer on pre-visualization for the animation, because it was so much bigger at one time and it just kept getting pared down, which is good, right? For, to cut it to what it needs to be. But man, one day I'll have to release that sketchbook worth of drawings you sent me of all the previs we did for that.
No, I think I spent like probably close to a year, just over a year, drawing and doing all the concepts for it. But yeah, it's probably literally probably just over 1,000 drawings and digital paintings.
It's amazing.
And many versions of storyboards.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be cool to see those at some point, like as the film becomes a legacy thing and more people see it, it would be cool to see those drawings as an accompaniment as well. So, Trevor, this is a personal story for you, and in many ways, identity is it's a tricky thing for Indigenous peoples, a sensitive thing, a contentious thing. So had you made films before this that you were actually acting in or about yourself, and what was that process like for you?
Well, I mean, it was a very personal place that it had to go, and there was a reason for that. It was because I'm not a historian. I am not a postdoctorate student. I'm just somebody who works in film and television and has a history and is interested in what our legacies are. And I know that it's not just Aboriginal people, but yeah, you're right. There's a lot of trying to figure out who we are. And, that was, one of the things when I was growing up, because, like I have the colorings of my father. Growing up, I always thought that everyone had one brown mom and one, we all had those silly things when we were kids, but it got me thinking about legacy a lot. And this idea that it felt like sometimes our histories get not held for ransom, but there's always people in our many communities that don't like to share, and feel like you have to go find what I've already found instead of just sharing it. And I found that during a lot of my time. And I don't think it's great for us as a people, but, I acknowledge it happens a lot more than it should. And it's one of those things that, when we talk about, what's our shared legacies, or, this idea of feeling out of step with your people, I felt like we kind of found this really interesting intersection, because, I had lunch with this this Ukrainian woman who completely understood because she felt like her grandkids had lost their connection to her Ukrainian culture. And, it was one of those things that kept her up at night. It was one of those late night things. And it got me realizing that that experience is similar. This idea of, when you do nothing and you start feeling the legacy leaving, the only thing you can do is start finding it, is to actually get out on the road and get out on the computer and look for it. I felt like I talked too long there. Sorry about that.
Oh, no, it's good. Gilbert, in terms of, we talked about the blending of the animation in with the road movie and the documentary and all of these things. I'm just curious about after watching the film, like what are your influences? Who are your influences as an animator? Who had influenced your aesthetic?
I think it's just about everything I grew up with. It's of course the Saturday morning cartoons back in the 80s. It's all the stuff like that. It's and visiting animation houses in Canada, and just meeting people in the industry, like all the animators and all the craftspeople and everyone on Wapu's Bay, and then the following Guardians. They all inspire me, and everything I see on TV and the internet, everything art-wise, animation-wise, the masters of animation, Chuck Jones and Richard Williams, those ones, their work is just so amazing, and I just try to set my bar that high and just keep on going, accept every challenge.
Well, we have about 3 minutes. So you mentioned before that you've worked together for a long time. Are you working together again soon? And if not, what are some of the other works or things that you're working on? Let people know.
Ooh, well, I mean, Gilbert and I have been hoping to work together again very soon. We're chatting around a couple different projects. Right now, we're still kind of in Saskatchewan history and looking at projects there. But we've been talking about looking at some more stop motion, maybe doing a series for expanding on this idea of Shadow of Dumont and turning it into a series to see what that would look like, and to see if we can find enough interesting histories that we can start painting more vans and going to more communities when it's safe, of course.
Yeah,
maybe we could hermetically seal the van. We'll just interview through the windows.
There you go.
It's like a historic ice cream truck.
We definitely want more painted vans. We need that. But Gilbert, what are you working on, or what's your next project that we can see you?
Well, I'm doing remote storyboard work for animation company in Halifax right now, which is kind of right up my alley. If I have to be home, I may as well work in the field that I love. But so I work from home, and then I got my day job back in One Arrow. So I go up there every day and come back and draw. So I actually got a couple of animated projects that I'm working on right now that I can't really disclose right now.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. It's like I have a couple projects that I'm officially working for, but I can't talk about them.
Yeah, so
Right?
Yeah,
so I'm very busy, and I don't mind that at all. So
yeah.
Well, thank you both for joining us and for making the film. It was such a pleasure to watch it. A real privilege as part of the jury to see it a few months ago now, and to see it again today was great. So thank you both so much for joining us.
Oh,
thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And just to let everyone watching know, we have another feature focus at 4 o'clock for the shorts program, Red. So join us then. Okay.
Oh, that should be good. See ya.
Thank you.